Club. Alexa first became a member of Nokomis in 2003. It is no surprise that she was attracted to an historic community service organization, as she has a long personal history of serving on various boards of nonprofits, as well as holding several appointed offices. A native of California and living in the Bay Area, she served on the Pinole Citizens Committee and the Capital Improvements Program Committee, was a board member of the Housing Alliance, and chair of the Countywide Housing and Community Development Council. After moving to Redmond 30 years ago, she remained involved in serving in such capacities as a board member of Civic Action on Redmond's environment. Alexa holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Seattle University, is the mother of 2 sons and a daughter. Happy Mother's Day, Alexa. She is a businesswoman and also a serious cellist. She has played for the East Side Symphony and the Rainier Symphony, as well as the Berkeley Free Orchestra in her home state. This is a very short list of her involvements, and I have to say that I had to coax all this information out of Alexa because she gave me a very abbreviated biography. So she's rather humble, and I'm glad that she gave me a few more details. So please join me in welcoming our speaker, Alexa Munoz.
Nokomis Club, a portrait of a women's organization, 1909 to the present. Redmond in 1909 was home to 450 people, but there were large distances and dense forests separating the residences. The pioneer women desired enhancement of their social lives and intellectual lives that would alleviate their loneliness. The creation of an organized group provided the opportunity to join together with other compatible women who shared a mutual interest. This was very typical of what Redmond looked like in 1901. Here, Mabel Perigo and her sister Nellie were cooks for this crew of loggers who were logging the site of Redmond Junior High under the direction of their brother Tom. It's very different than today. Meeting on January 3rd, 1909, 6 women designated the new organization, the Nokomis Club of Redmond, Washington. Derived from Longfellow's poem, The Song of Hiawatha, Nokomis is the Ojibwe word for grandmother, and the name Longfellow used for Hiawatha's grandmother. Longfellow wrote, by the shores of Kichigumi, by the shining deep sea water, stood the wigwam of Nokomis, daughter of the moon Nokomis. Dark behind her rose the forest, rows of black and blooming pine trees, rows of firs with cones upon them. Right before it beat the water, beat the clear and sunny water, beat the shining deep sea water. The Constitution these 6 women wrote reads, a number of ladies were requested to meet at the home of Mrs. W.B. Williams on Wednesday, June 3rd, 1909, the purpose of which was to organize some form of a club. We there organized, named, and also constructed the laws and bylaws of the Nokomis Club. The officers of the club were chosen as follows: Commander-in-Chief, Mrs. G.W. Huffman; Chief, Mrs. W.B. Williams; Clerk, Mrs. Hayes Huffman; Banker, Mrs. William Forrester; Advocate, Mrs. Ernest Adams; Attendant, Miss Mabel Adams. The laws and bylaws they wrote read, 1. Only those of good moral character may become members of the club.
Sherry.
2 negative bars any person from membership. 3. The dues are 10 cents per meeting. 4. The use of the funds are to be used for any purpose the majority of the members decide. 5. A fine of $5 shall be imposed on any member who creates a disturbance which in any way reflects upon the club. either with those that are or are not members of the club. There shall be a meeting of the club every 2 weeks. Thursday was set as the day. A fine of $5 shall be imposed on anyone who serves more than tea, cake, A term of office shall not exceed 1 year. The initiation fee shall be 25 cents. The Maysteel Heflin was the first commander-in-chief. She was 28 at the time and was a member of the club for 8 years. She was born in the upper Midwest and in her late teenage years worked as a domestic for the Vaughn family in Issaquah. She married Charles Huffman, part owner of the Redmond Trading Company, and had 2 children, Hazel and John. She died in 1920. Jenny Williams was the chief. She was 31 and a member for 4 years and became chief counsel in 1910 to 1913. Originally from Indiana, Jeannie married William B. Williams when she was 15. They had a daughter, Ola Margaret, and a son, Wardolph. Jenny moved away from Redmond in 1913 when her husband found a job in the logging industry. They eventually settled in Corning, California. Lena Brewster Huffman, 21, was a member for 9 years. She arrived in Redmond from Eugene, Oregon in 1907 and married Hayes Huffman and was Sunday school superintendent of the Methodist Church, as well as supervisor for the Red Cross. Her daughter, Merle Huffman Johnson, was a member of Junior Nokomis. Lena died in 1918. Harriet Hattie Green of the Forester 29 was a member for 30 years. She was born in Iowa and grew up in Oysterdale, Pacific County. She met her husband there and married him in Astoria, Oregon before relocating to Redmond, where her husband was first a school teacher and then a businessman. They had 2 daughters and a son. Daughter Louise also became a member of the club. Hattie passed away in 1955 at the age of 75. Urania Rennie Farrell Adams, 51, was a club member for 4 years. Rennie immigrated from Canada to the United States and became a naturalized citizen. Her husband Ernest was the section boss for the Northern Pacific Railroad. They had 1 daughter and 3 surviving sons. She died at the age of 60 in 1919. Mabel Adams Larson, 24, was a member for 4 years. She was born in Minnesota. After completing her schooling, she was employed as a bookkeeper for the Redmond Trading Company, and about 1920 became the head bookkeeper there. About 1922, she married John Dwayne Larson and had a son, Richard, born in 1923. She resided in Kirkland until her death in 1969. Janet Ada Jenny Adair Sykes, 41, joined at the second club meeting and was a member for 13 years. She immigrated with her parents from Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, to homestead at Adair Farm on Novelty Hill in 1871. Following a diphtheria epidemic in 1884, she married William Sykes in 1884 and went to live at Vincent, which is the present site of the Carnation Farm. Following a diphtheria epidemic in 1889, Jenny and her husband moved to Redmond, where Ezra built and ran the Valley Hotel. The hotel burned down in 1910, and Jenny, her husband, and their 2 sons returned to their farm in Vincent. Jenny loved farm life and was very hospitable hostess and a popular member of the community. In addition to her membership in Nokomis, she belonged to 5 other organizations. Adair House and Anderson Farm is named for her. She is memorialized in the Nokomis records as a faithful member, willing club worker, and loved friend. She passed away at the farm in Vincent at the age of 71 in 1939. The relationship these women had with the Redmond Trading Company appears to be the common factor among them. May Huffman and Lena Huffman were both wives of the owners of the trading company. Mabel Adams was a bookkeeper there, and Minnie Adams was her mother. The first year the club studied the poets Whittier, Longfellow, Byron, Burns, and Tennyson. Their meetings generated enough interest to add 4 new members and attract 62 visitors. In November, the meetings shifted to Fridays. At the beginning of January 1910, the club made its first donation of $30, which is $654 in 2010 dollars, so the church could pay its insurance. 2 weeks later, the women discovered that their donation had not been spent for insurance. The bylaws were amended to read, "Club entirely independent of church, and any money raised is to be used for any other purpose than for church." The club has continued to be a non-denominational group. The women focused their service activities on sewing clothes for the orphans and homeless children housed at the Des Moines Industrial Home. Another priority was the recruitment of new members, and a committee was appointed to visit homes within the community to extend a personal invitation to potential members to attend one club meeting. By 1913, it was decided to change the meetings to the last Friday of the month. Funds were raised for club projects by holding monthly dances, with the first dance on February 10th, 1912, that made $27. But that is $589 in 2010 dollars. Card parties where bridge and military whist were played was another favorite fundraiser. The first card party was held November 7th, 1912. The 2 methods of fundraising enabled the club to assist the school. In 1914, a water fountain was installed for $61. This looks to have been a pool that was about 6 to 8 feet, so it was a good-sized pool. And there were also 2 water drinking fountains surrounding the pool at the pool site also. The club also donated $125 toward the construction of a new gym, and paid $75 for the clearing of trees, stumps, and rubbish from the old school grounds. The club also personally assisted members of the community with groceries, clothing, and furniture as needed. This is the first group photo of the club and at a meeting that was held in August of 1917 at the home of Helen Shenstrom. Far left is Mary Starstad, and here is Lena Otini, and the rest, the remainder are unidentified. Another photo opportunity occurred in 1918. And the first show on this picture is Martha Anderson and Molly Brewster. And this person's unknown. This is Lena Otini, Mrs. Tremble, and Amy Orr, and Selma Tinglestad, and Anna Perigo, and the rest are remainder are unidentified. The club had developed activities that had the purpose of improving the educational experience, but all of these activities came to a screeching halt in October 1918 when the Spanish flu epidemic reached Redmond. The flu vectored other diseases, causing attendance to plunge and cancellation of most meetings in 1919 and 1920. Club activities only very gradually resumed. Still, with 4 to 5 members attending, due to warm weather, the tradition of holding picnics in July began in 1920 when the club gathered at Cottage Lake. Another continued activity during March 1922, available members that participated in Red Cross home nursing classes. And the first discussion on the ways and means of establishing a library occurred. The club's influence was solicited to prevent rowdyism in the streets, and after the dances and bars closed on Saturday nights. A signed petition was presented to the town council that resulted in shortened Saturday night activity hours to midnight. Approval by the town council prevented the rowdyism. Club members committed in 1921 to a project of furnishing a nurse's room at the high school, and 3 card parties were held in 1922 to raise funds for the project, which was completed in 1923. The club also furnished suppers for card parties at the community center. The club had focused their activities on local domestic projects until December 1923, when donations to the Near East Relief Fund were sought. Following discussion, members noticed that there was no regular method of how to indicate a vote when polling the membership. It was decided the voting sign should be given by extending the arm upward and folding in Indian fashion. During 1924, the club contributed to the Near East Relief Fund, but by 1925, the club decided to discontinue, thinking their funds would have better use for projects at home, such as providing books for the school library. Club meetings and activities returned to normal finally in 1926. The women realized they had lots of money, but would need more if they were to take part in orthopedic work or start a library. The opportunity came to increase their earnings when the Granges decided to hold a 3-day fair in September in the old school building at Anderson Park. The club bid and was accepted to serve dinners. They charged 50 cents per dinner plate and plus 10 cents for dessert. The club made $253, $5,068 in 2010. The club's reputation for serving very good meals increased, and the women were asked to serve a banquet for the Royal Neighbors for organization that would pay 65 cents per plate for a menu of roasted chicken, potatoes, vegetables, salad, rolls, pickles, dessert, and coffee. By 1927, the club, by secret ballot, voted to establish a library. President Lois Wolver was very inspiring in her leadership of establishing a library, and all of the officers acted to bring the library into fruition. A committee was appointed to find a location. The club voted to rent the 2-room storefront owned by Herman Reed in the corner of this picture, which was next door to the Redmond Trading Company. Rent was $10 per month, and the first month was free if repairs were made. This house at the north end of Leary Way became important in the 1933 siting of the library. This is a 1938 photograph of the first library. Members canvassed the town for books. New books were purchased from a publisher. Secondhand stores in Seattle were another source of books, and several organizations donated books. Furnishings for the library were also donated by several individuals and a few businesses. Free water was donated by the town council. The first library opened on Saturday, October 29, 1927. It was celebrated by an open house, refreshments were served, and the Chamber of Commerce provided a welcoming gift of a fern. Library hours were 2 to 5 p.m. Wednesday and Saturday afternoons, and 7 to 9 Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Initially, 500 books were on the shelves, and 95 library cards were issued. A board of library control was established in December that gave the responsibility for library management to 4 club members elected with staggered terms. Board members were elected each year, and the board existed from 1928 to 1969. The only photo that exists is the board from 1940 to 41. They are Lamont Quackenbush, Hazel Anderson, and Mary Webley. Not pictured is Margaret Webley. Other organizational activities took place in 1928 also. The club joined the Federation of Women's Clubs, an affiliation that allowed the club to have access to greater resources that furthered skill development, expanded rights, and increased abilities applicable to resolutions of community, state, and national challenges. Members regularly took advantage of the training and programs offered at district and state conventions. The club belonged to the Federation until 1995, a period of 67 years. In May 1929, the club devised a successful strategy to ensure all members would equally share in activity preparation and fundraising tasks. This was accomplished by dividing the club into 3 committees, with each committee assigned responsibilities on a rotating basis. By the summer of 1929, it became obvious that more space was required for the library. and the move to the Grand Central Hotel's big room was made over Labor Day weekend. The book collection expanded in October with the arrival of 300 books from the Washington State Catholic Library. Library hours were extended to Tuesday and Thursday, 7 to 8:30 p.m., Wednesday, 12 to 4 p.m., and Saturday, 2 to 4 p.m. Club members who work to maintain stock, buy books, and serve the patrons in the library are pictured in this 1932 photo. Identified are Irene Brown, Selma Tinkle Stab, these are unknown people, Catherine Word, June Bartow, Lena Otini, Margaret Buckley, and Grace Thomas. These women also participated in the card parties, which continued to be a primary fundraiser, and provided dinner service for the men's club, who had become regular monthly patrons in 1931. The library site at the Grand Hotel became problematic when the hotel decided to open a bar in the lobby, and patrons would have to pass through the bar areas to use the library. There were no other available buildings in Redmond suitable for use as a library. Chief Counsel Mabel Perigo Johnson gave an inspirational talk at the beginning of 1932 advocating construction of Nokomis' own library building, and a committee was appointed to investigate the possibility. Irene Brown, a club member, and her husband, Alfred N. Brown, donated 50 feet of their back garden for the building, and by December 1932, it was decided that the use of shingle siding rather than log siding would save $30. Construction advanced rapidly. Dedication of the building took place on February 22, 1933, and the library opened March 1, 1933. During the Depression, the library was very popular, and during the 1930s, an average of 8,750 items per year were circulated. Our library hours were Tuesday and Thursday, 7 to 8:30 p.m., Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday, 2 to 4 p.m. For many years, this bronze plaque was by the library's front door to commemorate the opening of the library and the donation of the property by Irene and Alfred Brown. The Redmond Public Library became a nonprofit corporation in 1933. The trustees were Ada Huffman, Irene Brown, and Lena Otini. Mabel Johnson became a trustee in 1942 when Ada Huffman died. In 1934, the Redmond Public Library was granted the equivalent tax-exempt status of a 501c4 social welfare organization. Activities expanded in the new library space. The town council met in the library from 1933 to 1944. A preschool clinic for children was held, and the Girl Scouts had their meetings in the library until 1972. Fundraising events included the play A Hot Day that earned $125, $2,516, and $22. A minstrel show made $58, and participation in a carnival earned $298, $5,995, and $22. The primary fundraisers, though, were still card parties and dances. Demand for membership grew. In 1934, the membership was increased to 40. The junior club was formed, and its first meeting was in May 1934. The intention of the new club was to train women to be senior club members, but Junior Nokomis soon became an independent organization, although affiliated with the Nokomis Club. Junior Nokomis disbanded in 1985, and the remaining members joined the Nokomis Club. The club celebrated its 25th anniversary with the purchase of 96 books and additional furnishings for the library. During January 1936, the club held 2 meetings to discuss the construction of an addition to the library. By the end of the month, there was overwhelming acceptance of the project, which was to be built with Works Progress Administration labor. The addition would have a great room, a kitchen, and 2 new restrooms. Construction began in the spring of 1937 and was completed at the end of October 1937. The club mortgaged the property for the sum of $1,200, $24,528 in 2010 dollars to pay for the cost of the materials. Taken in 2014, the north side of the addition opens onto the parking lot. The west side shows the extent of the 1937 addition. This part is the original building, and all this other roof line is of the 1937 addition. A plaque was placed by the door adjacent to the parking lot to commemorate construction by the WPA. This floor plan indicates the size of the new addition, which was planned to hold 100 individuals for sit-down meals, usually dinners, although some lunches were also served. The kitchen was equipped with appliances, pots, pans, utensils, and dishes to cook for and serve 100 people. The largest in attendance at a dinner was 117, and the smallest was 25. Dinner service expanded to clubs other than the men's club, and the businessmen's club and the schoolmen's club became regular patrons. Fees derived from renting the social hall for use by individuals and community organizations became a major source of revenue. This is the original library area, and it was called the Cottage. A luncheon Nokomis served consisted of crab salad, spinach souffle, sweet potatoes, bacon, broiled pineapple jelly, hot baking powder biscuits, pickles, and Jello Bavarian ice cream. Beverages were coffee and spreads. Dinner might include this menu of grapefruit orange juice cocktail, radishes, onions, tomatoes, pickles, dressing, roast turkey, scalloped cabbage, new potatoes, gravy, assorted breads, strawberry shortcake, and coffee. Another menu featured sliced tomato and onion salad, ham, corn souffle, gravy, mashed potatoes, French bread, rye bread, butterscotch pie, whipped cream, and coffee. Was anyone present to eat any of these meals? Hope your mouth is watering already. In order to construct the addition to the library, the club turned the deed over to the town in order to obtain works progress administration labor, since no private organization could employ WPA labor. It was understood when the work on the addition was completed, the property cleared of the mortgage would revert to the Nokomis Club. Instead, on May 1st, 1940, a 99-year lease was signed by the trustees with the town of Redmond because Judge Ryle ruled that it was legally impossible to change the deed when the trustees presented their case before them. The mortgage was paid in full, and a mortgage burning ceremony was held on November 11, 1942. The club had a very good time at their 1939 picnic at Beaver Lake, so they decided to return for their annual picnic in 1940 to Beaver Lake again, which is east of Pine Lake on the Sammamish Plateau. According to Irene Brown, their experience turned out quite differently than expected. Perfidious Pete Pluvius, proclaiming predominant power, produced prodigious precipitation, preventing peregrinating populace picnicking pastorally. Prearranged plans popped, panic prevailed, papooses pouted, parents perspired, perforce pleasure bent people perambulated pell-mell popular pavilion to pacify poignant pangs. Potluck potpourri provided plenteous platters of palatable provender, placating pancreatic pandemonium and producing panegyrics of praise. Picnickers partook of plump partridges, kitchen pot pie, persimmons, pancakes, pabulum, papayas, pumpkin, pecans, peanuts, popcorn, pineapple, pickerel, hop and pork, poultry, pastries, pemmican, pepper pot, carboiled corn, pistachios, prunes, pretzels, porridge, peas, potatoes, plums, pears, peppers, pomegranates, and popsicles. Playful palaver and popular pastimes provided pleasure for pampered patrons. Popular poem proved paradoxical picnic practically perfect. Beginning in August 1946, many meetings were held during the late summer and fall with with the King County Rural Library District, Town of Redmond, and the Nokomis Club in order to make a determination on the future administration of the library. After meeting with representatives of the rural King County Library District in October, the Nokomis Club members signed up with the King County Public Library for 1 year. Since the library district was funded with tax funds established by a taxing district approved in 1942, the town council voted on December 4th, 1946 to contract with the rural King County Library District for library purposes commencing in January 1st, 1947. This contract was to provide a paid librarian and furnish books, but the Nokomis Club was still responsible for the repair, maintenance, and cleaning of the building, and also was responsible for the utility costs. Data from the club financial records indicate the ongoing operational costs. Right here. The utility costs for 1946-47 were $332.27, and in 1952-53 it was $276.18, only $56 less than in 1946-47. So this was very much a drain on the budget. The club turned all of the books over to the library district except the memorial books, and when the library resumed service in January 2nd, 1947, the librarian was Mamie Orr, who continued as librarian until 1959. Mrs. Orr was also a member of the Nokomis member who had joined the club in 1922. Here, Mrs. Orr helps Donald Barker find an interesting book. Mrs. Orr reported that during January, 1,098 books had been checked out and 278 library cards issued. By 1952, the library had experienced significant growth, and circulation of library items reached 14,268. Supervised by Mrs. Orr over New Year's break, the book collection of 6,000 was moved into the clubhouse, and the main entrance became the side door. Hours were extended to 7 to 9 p.m. Monday, 2 to 5 p.m., and 7 to 9 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday, and 11 to 4 on Sunday. Mrs. Baker's third grade class uses the library in June. And elementary school students use the library regularly. Are there people here who came to the library in the Nokomis building? Oh, quite a few. Right. In the meantime, the club explored the sale of the building with the town council. In 1955, the club discovered that because of the lease signed with the town in 1940, they did not have clear title to the property. In December 1957, at a special meeting with the town council, it was disclosed the town did not have a record of a deed or any deed in its possession. After meeting with the town council, the club voted to file a friendly lawsuit to obtain a clear title. The short trial occurred in March 1958, and the judge ruled the lease with the town was null and void and of no effect whatsoever. The title to the property was awarded to Nokomis free and clear of all claims. 50 members of the, 50 people helped Nokomis celebrate their 50th anniversary. No names are recorded in this photo of members, but these members showed the Nokomis determination and true grit. Nokomis members and their relatives rolled up their sleeves to clean up the club property, including repair and painting of the building exterior and lawn and flower bed restoration following installation of the sewers in 1960. A ramshackle shed was removed from the back lot. A committee was appointed to approach the town council with a request to clear, grade, and asphalt the lot for parking. The town council agreed to the project, which was quickly accomplished. The cleanup inspired nearby property owners to improve their properties, and the mayor was so impressed with the improvements that he declared a general cleanup week from May 21st to 27th, 1961. While some changes were accomplished in the town, low citizen turnout prevented completion of all that needed to be done. in anticipation of the World's Fair. 2 special cleanup fix-up paint-up days were scheduled for July 29th and August 12th, 1969. While some changes were accomplished in the town, it still needed more. So Nokomis President Jesse Norman and President-elect Ivan Johnson were selected to be public relations co-chairs by General Chair of Councilwoman Kurt Johnson. Their job was to contact 15 organizations personally to stimulate interest in the cleanup and to plan and supervise the meals for the cleanup workers. 200 people participated in the town cleanup on both scheduled days and were treated to a supper prepared by the Nokomis members and recruits from other organizations. A typical Nokomis meeting consisted of lunch, followed by a business meeting, then a speaker, other entertainment. At this meeting in January of 1962, an art exhibit was held and the speaker, Esther Almain, spoke on form and design. Here she critiques a painting by Redmond artist May Williams. The painting is held by Catherine Lewis and President Ivan Johnson lives on it. In 1964, a library relocated outside of the Nokomis building. When it relocated, 17,000 books were taken to the new location, which was half of the Napa Auto Parts building. Helen Cotterell, the librarian, turns the keys over to Lena Otini, one of the founding library members, and Lois Wolford, who was president in 1927. After 37 years, the club no longer had responsibility for the library, but a committee of members was formed who chose to work at the new location. The club continued for several years to sponsor the open house held at the library each year during National Library Week. Lena Otini was one of the founding members, as I mentioned, and the second librarian, Helen Cotterell, reviewed past library records. The club had supported its operations since 1948 when building rentals. Added revenues from sales began in 1962 when members began selling holiday fruitcakes and stationery notes with a Washington motif. New projects were donations to Eastside handicappers, Rainier School in Buckley, sewing lap robes for wheelchair occupants at the Stewart School, and providing birthday cakes for juveniles at Emerald Land. The club also co-sponsored driver education classes with other groups. Active club members celebrate the 60th anniversary in 1969. Lena Otini, Irene Brown, Catherine Lewis, Selma Tingelstad, Della Sunholm, Louise Myers, and Dorothea Tripp. Club officers in 1970, Selma Tingelstad, President, Mildred Streeter, Treasurer, Hazel Anderson, Secretary, and Jenny Schobert, Vice President, suddenly received a bill from the county assessor for back taxes of $1,831. Upon investigation, it was found that the club property was no longer tax exempt because the library had moved away. The Redmond Chamber of Commerce had been based in the Nokomis building since 1968 and were also a community service organization. After considerable deliberation, the club decided to sell the building to the Chamber of Commerce for payment of back taxes, a $300 per annum payment for 15 years into a scholarship fund administered by the Nokomis Club. And the club is allowed to use the premises as a meeting place on the last Friday of each month for 15 years. This photo taken on January 26, 1972 shows Sylvia Neslin, Nokomis Club President, handing over the deed to the Nokomis building to Chamber of Commerce Vice President William Taylor. Looking on our Chamber of Commerce officers, Robert Bailey, Director, Russ Rogers, Treasurer, Janet McClure, Secretary. Nokomis officers are Barbara Kingstrom, Vice President, Grace Thomas, Treasurer Dorothea Trippett, Chair of the Building Sale Committee, and Hazel Anderson, Secretary. In honor of the country's bicentennial celebration, the first scholarship was awarded to Diane Hancock in 1975. Each year since then, a scholarship has been awarded to a Redmond High School graduating senior. Are there any scholarship recipients here by any chance? No one. 1984, the recipient was Michelle Mosier, shown with scholarship committee members Olive Janine, Marie Wood, and Hazel Corwin. Seated is Frederica Denton, Redmond High School counselor. The 2013 scholarship committee is Ann Dumont, Doris Townsend, Marion Curry, and Sharon Wood. The recipient was Claire Monses, and this is her mother, Tina. Other projects undertaken in celebration of the bicentennial in 1976 were determined through the suggestion of the Federation of Women's Club and consisted of sales of commemorative plates, jewelry, and stationery notes. The club participated in tree planting project and donated 44 trees that were planted in Fairmont, Border, and Marymore parks. Altogether, Federation members planted over 2,000 trees nationwide during 1976. The Nokomis members are pictured on their 75th anniversary in this 1984 club portrait, and unfortunately there are no names for this either. Raffled and bike derby in 1985 with the proceeds to benefit the scholarship fund with this quilt designed by Jenny Bright. Composed of 12 Redmond Historic Building illustrations, Jenny sewed the quilt with Hazel Johnson and Mildred Streeter and Hazel Kerwin. The quilt was won by Bonnie Tellickson, daughter of Hazel Kerwin. During the mid-1980s, the Park and Recreation Department began emphasizing the financial requirements they would need to provide services and activities to the growing senior population. Nokomis participated in fundraising efforts to expand senior services and supported 2 club members, Marie Wood and Audrey Gorlick, in the operation of Green Survival Recycling Center, whose funds were donated to town beautification and the first aid car. Marie Wood and Audrey Gorlick were also instrumental in planning the senior center, and when it opened in 1990, Nokomis had provided a generous donation toward their furnishings. Maintenance of a good relationship with the library has always been important to the club. The 70th anniversary of the founding of the Redmond Library in 1997 is celebrated by club members Alice Lechner, Faye Swin, Marie Wood, President, Leona Rasmussen, Treasurer, Audrey Gorlick, and Jenny Bright, Secretary. In October 2003, the Founders Plaque was dedicated at Redmond Regional Library. Listening to Mayor Rosemary I's remarks are Audrey Gorlick, Rose Wise, Vice President, Jenny Bright, and Claire Amomar, President. The Nokomis Club's 100th anniversary was celebrated in 2009 with the donation of the Women of Vision, a glass sculpture by John Tedford, to Redmond Regional Library. Officers are left to right: Kathy Moody, Claire Amomar, and Rose Wise. This is another high-resolution photo from Hepstetter Photography of the Women of Vision that's in the library. A history book of the club, the Nokomis Club of Redmond, A Century of Community Service, 1909 to 2009, is presented to members and guests at the January 2012 meeting. Christine Hines holds the book while the artwork and the foreword is described. Nokomis is our legendary inspiration and icon. Beckoning is the comfort and warmth of home symbolized by the teepee, where sustenance is provided not only to the body but to the spirit, portrayed by the goddess of knowledge and the goddess of wisdom. These qualities form the basis of our mission statement: to promote and support educational programs and projects, and to address social needs in our community with commitment, empathy, and strength. The heart of the club is expressed in a poem that was written in 2007 by journalist Eileen McCroskey in honor of the club's 100th anniversary. The Women's Club was legendary, born during the pioneer days. Through it, the ladies were allowed to take part in the history of a newborn town, growing in the woods. Doing good works provided the noble purpose, required begrudging tolerance and recognition from the male powers that be. All women knew this. Their real need was for connection to each other in a difficult life, a place and time, however brief, to make friends. Church work gave some a chance to mingling. The ladies' aid did good works, but only with one faith and under watchful eyes, a select Sunday group. A diverse club that met each month on a Friday noon meant a stolen hour from solemn duties, out washboard, kettle sewing machines, wood-burning stoves, feeding chickens, children, and hungry men. And then an hour to talk, to laugh, to exchange ideas, at least the ideas women were allowed to have. And don't forget to do good works. Who could fault books for a library? And scholarships. No man would dare. Over time, there were never enough books. The best and brightest always needed scholarships. The women learned to appreciate their own value. The town outgrew the woods, became a city. The women thrived on friendship and good works, and the club survived over 100 years. The spirit of the club are the members. Pictured in this 2012 photo are Sharon Wood, Marion Curry, Pat Jovag, Christine Hines, Ann Dumont, Doris Hampson, and Rosemary Vines. The portrait of the Nokomis Club emphasizes strengthening the shared communal values of education and acquisition of knowledge, demonstrates empathy and compassion for our fellow citizens, and manifests the wisdom of common sense in our own choices. Decisions made by the City of Redmond require us to make use of all these attributes. A project has been approved to replace the Nokomis building with a 5-story building of 96 sleeping units of 200 square feet, ground floor retail of 730 square feet, a conference room of 200 square feet, and 29 parking places. Current approved plans require removal of the Nokomis building from inside of 82 years. This is looking northeast from Northeast 80th and Redmond Way. This is a view from 81st Street. This is looking at the front from Northeast 80th Street. And this is looking northwest from Northeast 80th Street to represent the current fourplexes next door. Historical preservation specialists were hired by the City of Redmond to perform historical inventories in 1998 and 2005. These inventories indicated the Nokomis building is significant for its association with the history of Redmond, specifically concerning the Nokomis Club, the Redmond Public Library, WPA involvement, and Depression-era architecture. 2005 inventory of the building showed that it is important that all 6 historic preservation study units. The building is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places and the local Register of Historic Landmarks. As the Nokomis Club completes its 106th year, we continue to evolve in order to assist in fulfillment of Redmond's contemporary educational and social service requirements. And thank you to everyone who has been of assistance. You've been very, very helpful.
Quite an interesting story of the role that women played in the development of this community. As usual, we will take some questions from the audience, and today, with all the people that grew up in Redmond, may have some stories of going to the library themselves or remembrances. We'd be happy to have you share those. Keep in mind that anyone who would like to talk about preserving the Nokomis building, supporting the effort and the appeal, that we will have a special session after this to to talk about that in detail in room 108. So this period right now is to really talk about the overall history of the club and to share some memories. So, before we take any questions, Alexa would like to introduce some of the club members.
There are just 3 here present today. Where's Rosemary Ives? And Pat Jovag? And Anne St. Germain. Thank you all for coming.
So do we have any questions? I'm going to take Tom first.
I saw the 1937 photograph up there. That was a very good impression. The WPA was active in creating infrastructure. Was that library associated in any way, or were funds coming in to help build that library by the WPA?
Yes, the rear section, the large read room and kitchen was built with WPA labor. They in particular wanted to support the men that were out of work in the community. So they worked with the town. The money had to go through the town. There's no private businesses could accept WPA financing. But that was built by WPA labor.
Yeah, hi. When you come to the early 1970s, I moved kind of slow and you went right by me. I didn't get my hand up in time. But anyway, and somewhere early in to mid-1970s, Renee Bruno was awarded this thing. Her name is on a trophy. And anyway, the trophy was smashed in a move. You know, she don't have it anymore, but the movers did the right way. And that's okay. But anyway, it was early 70s, maybe as late as the mid 70s. But anyway, yeah, she had, her name is on the trophy. Thank you.
Scholarship here? So any other questions or comments?
What involvement did the Nokomis have when the library moved to where Napa Auto Parts is now located?
Some of the women from the committee, and they still did assist the library, and then during National Library Week for several years, they did sponsor that for the library staff.
Any other questions?
You talk about all the different books and the need for room and everything else, and where these different books came from. I went to the library not too many times, but I saw the books and whatnot. I'm not a library person. The library that I know of was in this school, up on the other side of the balcony. My question is, was there any kind of coordination you may have known, I don't know, for the Nokomis Club, the library downtown, and the one in the Lake Washington School District? This school building in particular, did they have any kind of coordination to trade books in any way? Advice, whatever?
The only thing that I would guess would be that, and I talked to other people about who gave the information on how the library works. The elementary children, before they went upstairs, went to the Nokomis building to use the library. And once I think people got to about 4th grade, then they used the library upstairs so they could use encyclopedias. Now I imagine there probably was some coordination, but I found that unfortunately a lot of records have been lost, so some of these kinds of coordinated activities aren't recorded.
Any other questions or comments? Gentleman in the back?
During the summers, they didn't have summer.
She's going to bring you a microphone, sir.
I can speak out loud. During the summers, they did have summer reading programs from my youth. And so those of us who went to Redwood would go there and check out our books. And as I said in my piece the other day, we could travel to places we would never dream about.
That's right.
Anyone else with a comment or a memory? Tom, one more.
I remember the library when I was a kid, and my mother used to take me and maybe some of the neighborhood kids, and we go to the library, not to get books, but to see movies. And these were, this before television, and there would be a 16mm movie projector, and there would be black and white, and there were probably movies from the 1930s. And they were simple movies, family movies. And these were secondary movies one could see in movie theaters around the Seattle area. Back in those days, movies were usually two with all kinds of other programs, and they just ran continuously. But they brought that to the library. I thought it was, of course, I never thought of that when I was a kid. But we'd go to see a movie. Well, there's no television. And we didn't have to go to see a movie theater. Now, we went to the Issaquah movie theater. Before Redmond got his movie theater, Kirkland had a movie theater. And so we'd go there. It'd be kind of nice in the afternoon. And there all these kids would come at different ages. We'd go and they'd have the chairs all set up, and there'd be an open wall, and there'd be a projection over by the restrooms. And we'd all sit down, it'd be well coordinated, and we'd watch these movies. So that was an interesting side from going over there and getting books. One comment you had in here was Charles Barker. He's the same age as I am. We grew up together. He was a bookie type individual, librarian. His dad was a lawyer, and he lived in Redmond. So he would have easy access to that library to have an interest. A lot of us were not librarian type people.
The library was a very active library, and I think this touched on a little bit of what the activities were. A lot of people took classes there. You know, and outside of serving dinners, they did have a lot of activities. So I felt from the comments that I read, kind of the general theme was that they were really concerned about serving the community, and that was what was really important to the women that ran the library and fulfilling the needs of the people in the community.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what General Mac there, Tom mentioned. I think the library saved us rural children. I lived in Avondale on a dead-end road, and except for riding bikes, we would read all the time. And I really think that that helped me to understand the importance of going to college. And so I was the first one in my whole big family that went. And Margie, can I share, Margie Stensel, may I share, can you share about your experience at the library in the back room by the fireplace? Do you want to do that?
Margie, we're bringing you a microphone.
I got married in the Redland Methodist Church, my first white wedding, December the 31st, 1951, and our reception was held in the Nokomis fireside room, and the rental for the evening was $25. And two ladies from the Nokomis helped in the kitchen, and it was positively lovely. They decorated with flowers and everything for me for the $25. And my brother Jim Stenson and I, our great uncle Olaf Stenson, out of his estate, they gave money in 1933 or 34 for books, and there used to be a plaque right inside the door of the original part of the building that mentioned him giving the money. I don't remember, I think it was $500.
Thank you, Margie. I have one last question for you, and I'm not sure if you feel knowledgeable enough to answer this, but I was wondering if you could speak to how the women of Nokomis kind of fit into what was happening in this area relative to other women's groups. Was this a typical movement and organization in other communities, or was this unique?
No, 75% of the libraries are founded by women. This area was fairly isolated, and I think that it was after the flu epidemic, and so what comes to my mind was that there probably weren't very many reading materials when people were ill, and so they got a little bored, and so that just gave them the impetus to really open a library, although they were very literary minded. So it was probably several of they were very independent, so I don't really think that they were influenced so much by what was going on around them, other than what reading and doing in the community.
So I've got we got one more question. One thing more. I come over by Patsy. I'm going to ask you. I want to know when the men's club cooked for the ladies in Nokomis.
They were afraid to. I think Patsy.
Last question.
Really good comments, because she was probably one of anybody else work in the library besides Patsy? Go ahead, Patsy.
Mostly what I have is a comment, but also thanks to Alexa for all of her research, the many hours she has spent. What I have to say is, speaking to Tom's question about the coordination between the Nokomis Club Library and the one here in this building, my recollection serves, which may not be 100%, but I believe the library on the upper level was for the junior high school, whereas we as grade schoolers would go to the public library down the street. And I happen to be one of few, if possibly the only one, that was designated to walk down from whatever room I was in here in the 5th or 6th grade and be a worker at the library. I would check in books. It was a really big deal for me. I didn't get to file them until much later, but for an hour or two, probably twice a week, maybe it was only even once a week, check in the books. Mrs. Otini would come with an armful of books. I thought, how can one person read all those books in the due date period? But I was able to put the library card back in them, put them on the card, and then someone else would file them. And I guess one of the reasons that I have too many books in my life right now is that as I was checking in those books, I would make reading lists of books that I would like to read. So now I fault my mother in handling her estate that I had to deal with hundreds and thousands of books. Now I have some of hers, and I haven't stopped acquiring.